Hello and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and we are excited for our show. First of all, it is a brand new year. It is 2019. Very exciting, and you have the pleasure of having our first show of the year. This is Lee Wheeler-Berliner with the Colorado Workforce Development Council. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Alex. Thanks for having us today.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. So because it's a new year, I think we should talk about Colorado Workforce Development Council and the ins and outs and how that's going to work for you, particularly in 2019. You guys have had some really good successes in 2018, so I'm sure 2019 is going to be even more exciting.
Yeah, we are looking forward to a very exciting year ahead.
Yes. So you know what? Go ahead and start us off. What exactly is the Colorado Workforce Development Council, and what is your role as director there?
Sure. Thanks, Alex. So the Colorado Workforce Development Council is a powerful governor-appointed business-led coalition. And so I need to answer the question in a few different ways. The CWDC itself, the Workforce Development Council, as I said, is governor-appointed. That means we have a variety of members who represent all different types of industries in the state of Colorado and represent all different geographies throughout the state of Colorado. We have leaders of businesses in our state in those key industries. We have representatives of the workforce, whether that is organized labor or organizations serving specific populations in our workforce. And we also have some government agencies as well. That includes state legislators, we have state senators, state representatives, we have local county commissioners, and then also cabinet members who operate programs in various state agencies as well. So that is the heart of the council. As we talk about our work, we're also driven by a coalition of members, and that coalition really consists of a variety of state agencies. The CWDC is housed within the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment, and you might think to yourself, that makes sense. We're talking about workforce, so labor and employment, but the Department of Higher Education, the Department of Education, the Department of Economic Development and Local Affairs, regulatory agencies are all key partners, and human services as well. And so that coalition is when we get to work with those other state agencies that have some mission that really is strongly impacted by the ability of individuals to go to work. And so that's a big part of who we are. The last component I'll mention, and this gets a little more to my role, is that we have the Colorado Workforce Development Council office, which is the staff who are working full-time for the state of Colorado and really providing the on-the-ground logistical and strategic support to the council and help to execute the strategies that are set. I get to be the director of this team, and so get to work with a great group of folks each and every day to really see how we're working to support our sector partnerships in the state and to work on career pathways and to ensure that every Coloradan has access to meaningful employment. I'm thrilled to introduce a couple folks who are with us today. We have two of our business-appointed members, governor-appointed business members of the CWDC with us. First is Kyle Sickman here in studio. Hello, Kyle.
Hello, Lee. Good afternoon.
And then also we have Tim Fry joining us as well from Grand Junction.
Yes.
Hi, Lee.
So as I said, it's a statewide group. And so we break down our memberships based on the specific economic development regions in the state. So we have people from the Denver area, from the Western Slope, from all corners of the state of Colorado. And it's great to get that representation to really have strong intentional dialogue about what is the status of workforce and talent in our state, what are the needs that our companies have to ensure a strong economy, and how do we move forward with that. So I'd love to just talk more with our guests and get their perspective on the CWDC and the work that they do each and every day. And Kyle, I'll start with you. If you could share a little bit about yourself and the business you work for as well.
Sure. Thank you so much, Lee. Appreciate you having me on here, and really appreciate you having me as your chair of the Colorado Workforce Development Council. So my day job, I work as a senior vice president at First Bank in our business lending department. If you're not familiar with First Bank, which is hard if you're from Colorado, we're headquartered here in Lakewood, Colorado since 1963, about an $18 billion banking organization with 100 locations throughout the state. We've got a presence in Palm Desert and Coachella Valley, California, as well as the Phoenix metro area. We employ about 2,000 people, as well as being the largest employer in Jefferson County. Our primary business is consumer deposit-related banking services supported by residential mortgages, construction, commercial real estate, things of that nature. My primary role at the company is in our emerging business line of business lending and business financing. We provide treasury management services and financing vehicles to small to mid-sized businesses throughout the state.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kyle. And Tim, let's go to you. Tell us a little about yourself and your company.
Sure. Thanks, Lee. I'm a transplant to Colorado. I moved here from Ohio, although I've been here for 19 years, so I consider the state my home and where we've raised our family. So back in Ohio and back in my former life, I was actually a corporate litigation attorney and woke up one day and decided to have an entrepreneurial seizure and left the practice of law, moved to Colorado, and started a manufacturing company in Grand Junction. So the company I'm with is Mountain Racing Products, also known as MRP, and we design and manufacture high-end bicycle components primarily to the mountain bike market. So we like to say that we make products that allow people to better enjoy their passion for biking. And been doing that for 19 years, have a manufacturing base here in Grand Junction, and also sell into about 35 countries around the world. So small business in Colorado that touches the entire world, I guess.
Okay, great. As I mentioned earlier, the council is made up of people from a variety of industries. And in Colorado, we have an economic development blueprint. In that blueprint, it breaks the state into regions and then identifies key industries in each of those. And so Kyle, with his first bank experience, represents financial services industry, and then Tim representing manufacturing and that strong presence that it has in the economy as well. Tim, let's go back to you. And could you share a little bit about how you got involved with the CWDC and what your current role is?
Sure. So, the beginning of sort of working with workforce development really started here in Grand Junction with, working with our local workforce center and being part of the local workforce development board, which is, similar to the council, but at a local level. And I was the chair of that board for a couple of years. And during that time when I was chair, there was an opening on the council, and that was kind of the segue into having that local experience, and then having a bigger voice for rural Colorado and western Colorado at the state council level. So that was kind of how I got involved, here locally, and then also at the state level. And I'm recently just elected as the, chair-elect or vice chair of the council.
Okay, great. And Kyle, how about you? How did you get involved? And you mentioned you're the current chair, so you can start there and then tell us how you got involved with the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a pretty similar story to Tim. I'm actually a Colorado transplant as well. Grew up in Ohio, but moved here from Michigan. But just like Tim, when I came out to Colorado for work about 11 years ago, was managing retail locations for the bank in Adams County, and we were hiring employees through the workforce center. My predecessor up there had been involved in the local workforce development board and asked me to step in his place when I took over there. The then director at that time nominated me to the state council after a few years, immediately stepped into the treasurer role in the executive committee of the council, and then a few years later, peers of my council nominated me to act as their next chair.
Okay, great. There's a couple tenets that we maintain that kind of guide how we operate. And one is that the heart of Colorado is that results are really locally driven. And we know that there's a tremendous amount of diversity in our state. And so we do have the state workforce board, the Colorado Workforce Development Council, and we're looking at all parts of Colorado. And as Tim and Kyle both referenced, there are local workforce development boards throughout the state. And we have 10 local workforce boards. Those are based on various local areas that are set up. And they're able to really focus in on what solutions are necessary to drive the economy in those specific geographies. Mesa County is an example of a single county workforce area. Adams County is also a single county area. We have several that encompass 1, 2, 3, or sometimes a few more counties than that. So we have that localized structure. Another tenet that we really live by is that for our talent development system to be successful, we believe that it has to be industry-led. Because if there's not the job at the end of the day waiting for somebody who you're training, then there's not much point in investing in an individual to train them. And so we strongly believe in an industry-led approach. Kyle, I'm curious as to your take. Why do you see it as important to have this industry-led approach in terms of Colorado's success for workforce development?
Yeah, the industry-led approach is one of the most critical components about the success that CWDC has had here in Colorado, and a lot of things that I hear as I'm talking to folks in the workforce space around the country. But at the end of the day, education, workforce development, economic development, they all drive towards shared goals, which are similar to CWDC's vision, having a skilled workforce, meaningful employment, and economic vitality. Where the rubber really hits the pavement in these efforts, though, is industry. And by having industry lead these efforts, you're reducing disconnect, improving retention. You stop pursuing efforts that don't really work, and then you get a certain level of foresight as to what's happening in the industry to inform how educators in economic development and workforce are going to continue their efforts going forward. And at the end of the day, for participants in industry, you are footing the bill for most of these efforts and have a vested interest in ensuring that you're getting a good return on your investment as well.
Okay, great. Tim, from your perspective, why do you see it as critical to have this industry-led approach in Colorado?
Well, and I would mimic a lot of what Kyle has said, and maybe build on a couple of things from a standpoint of specifically the industry. The companies that are leading the markets here in Colorado, they're very intimately familiar and with what their needs are and where the gaps are, within the training and the workforce that they're seeing and what they're trying to accomplish with their goals as a company. And to not take that into account would definitely in some cases end up being going down the wrong hole to try to solve a problem, and potentially even creating education programs or technical training programs, potentially even different career pathways. When those individuals get out of those training programs, there's not sufficient need within the state, for those individuals. So allowing the industry to lead the discussion and lead some of the, the clear directives of the council really ensures that the trainings tie in directly with what industry needs are, and it also ensures that industry is buying in to what's happening both at the state level and the local level with respect to workforce development.
Sure.
So it's definitely a critical piece to that success of the program.
Okay. And I think that industry buy-in is critical. And one of the themes we see in this state, and it's touched on already today by the fact that both Kyle and Tim and myself are transplants to the state of Colorado. I think for a long time there's been this perception that Colorado has a great quality of life. It's an amazing state. Companies will want to move here, and they're not going to be concerned about the quality of talent that they find here already because people will always want to move here. What we're starting to see, and what we reported in the 2018 Talent Pipeline Report, which was released just last month and is available on the Colorado Workforce Development Council's website, is that we're starting to see net migration slow down. And so as the cost of living has risen truly in all parts of the state of Colorado, people are not staying in the state as long. We're still getting people who move here, but they may be leaving after 5-10 years. And so we're creating gaps in our workforce. And we're seeing a much bigger need to ensure that we are developing and training our own workforce and developing the workforce of the future. And that's a place where we truly see businesses needing to set the tone, to be able to say that they want to help develop that workforce. They're willing to share the needs with the educational system, with other community partners, to really explore how we can set up a system that is going to produce the right levels of talent with the right types of skills to keep driving the economy of Colorado forward. Tim, you've been heavily involved in your local community, as you mentioned, with the Mesa County Workforce Board, and would love to hear from you for a few minutes about how you've seen your role on the Workforce Development Council. How has that created value for either your community or for your company specifically?
Sure. I would say with respect to for our community and, Mesa County, Grand Junction, and, the Western Slope in general. I mean, one of the reasons that I was so excited about being involved, with the council at the state level was to make sure that the voice of Western Colorado was presented at the state level very, very well. And I would say that that because a lot of times when you are remote, being 4+ hours away from Denver, the perception always is that we're forgotten about over here. And the reality is that there is a strong focus of, the governor's initiatives, the council's initiatives, really do cover the entire state. But I'd say that, but I would say that the key thing is just really providing that voice, and being able to make sure that, programs and things that are happening at the state level are not only making it back over here, but also our local politicians and elected officials and also the partners in the community are aware of what's happening at the state level and how we as a community, can benefit or leverage those things. I would also say that I'm also, it's a little selfish. I always take away a new nugget or a new tool in my quiver of maybe how to look at challenges and how to solve problems. The council is an extremely diverse group of individuals, as you indicated in the beginning, Lee, and all of those people bring a lot of talent to the table in trying to solve, some pretty big challenges that we face in the state with respect to workforce development and how we can maximize, funding to achieve the biggest result. And, being able to take some of those things that you learn and apply them back to challenges that your company is facing. I always walk away from a meeting with something that I say, well, I'm going to try to see how I can leverage that in our company. So.
Okay, great. Kyle, how about you? How have you seen your involvement create value in your community or for your company?
Yeah, no, I've seen it create value in both of those areas as well as others. One of the things that we've alluded to throughout this conversation is that the majority of the state council members do also serve on their local boards. And it's something that we are very intentional about discussing on a regular basis when we do convene the entire council from around the state, is ensuring that we're, as Tim alluded to, paying attention to the non-metro, non-front range parts of Colorado and how all of our efforts can impact them. But specifically with regard to my involvement in the Adams County Workforce Board, it really, I'd say, and across the state, having the involvement both from the state and the local level really informs bilateral efforts at both the state and local board and operational efforts, as well as creating transparency and a sense of advocacy at the local level for any sort of flow-through requirements such as funding or planning efforts that take place. On a personal level, I'm constantly bringing business owners and operators into the workforce sphere. In my daily work, I'm talking to, business owners all over the state about a whole variety of things, and I bring them into conversations around programs that the departments offer, how to get job postings out there in more places, trainings that are available to their workforce, as well as different industry efforts that they can get engaged in when they're bringing up issues that they're having in their day-to-day work. One of the other things that I'm constantly talking to business owners about is some of these antiquated perceptions of the role of the public workforce system as it pertains to the modern business environment and how it has really changed over time. And a lot of people haven't really been informed about how it's changed. I've even gone as far as, I brought my family out here, and I even got my father down in Colorado Springs volunteering at a job center. He's retired, and he's doing interview prep and resume writing with veterans down there. So I've got everybody involved in the workforce sphere. And then in terms of my day-to-day business, beyond being able to just provide resources to business owners I talk to, my business is all about relationships and being in the flow in terms of what's going on throughout the state and in various industries. And both for myself, I've gotten other colleagues of mine involved in these circles throughout the state, which has been very beneficial from a business development standpoint.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, these are both really great examples of how much you can get involved, and it seems like you both have really taken a lot of involvement within CWDC. But for businesses or individuals that may be a little more timid, is there a smaller role I can play at the CWDC if I wanted to get involved or my business to get involved?
Yeah, so a little bit about the structure of how we're set up. Both Tim and Kyle mentioned the meetings that we have and the convenings. The full council meets 3 times a year. And every time we meet, it's 1.5 days of business spread over 2 days. So typically a Thursday and a Friday. We'll start 10 or 11 a.m. on a Thursday, finish up by 1 or 2 o'clock on a Friday. We always do one meeting in the Denver metro area, and then we invite council members to serve as hosts in their local communities. So we were in northern Colorado, in Greeley in September. We'll be in Aurora this month, later on in January, and then looking to be in different parts of the state later on. Our meetings are always open to the public. So if anybody wants to come and observe, understand a little bit more about how the council functions, they can reach out to us about upcoming meetings and come and sit in on all or part of one of those 2-day meetings. We also have 3 different steering committees, and these steering committees help guide more granular aspects of the work. So we have a sector steering committee, which is completely set up to ensure that our sector partnership model for how we engage businesses is continued to be enhanced effectively, that we're deploying funds appropriately to support those entities, and that we're testing out the right amount of new ideas. And so with these steering committees, that's a place where people who are not governor-appointed members can get involved and can support the work of one of our standing steering committees. The second is our Education and Training Steering Committee. It really serves to look at our educational system, both the K-12 system as well as post-secondary and higher ed, and to ensure that that system is aligned to the needs of industry that we're seeing. And so we're able to convene partners from across that spectrum to really talk about how they're working together, how we're working in an aligned fashion to ensure that all of the training programs line up to meet the needs of Colorado. The third steering committee is an advocacy steering committee, and there's a few different components within that, but a big chunk of that work is about public awareness and perception. Kyle, as you alluded to, there's sometimes a negative stigma about the workforce system and what it means to go into a workforce center. And, part of that stems to the evolution of our public system. There's federal laws that were passed in the 30s that guide part of the work that we do, and then there's been a series of laws passed every 5 or 10 years since the 60s that really update that and augment it. It truly is a modernized system now in terms of how businesses are a customer of the system. We exist to help support and serve businesses and their hiring needs, as well as serving those job seekers that need assistance and support to get retrained if their job has gone away, if they've been in an industry that's left the state or left the country in some instances, or if they have some barriers and challenges they need to overcome to be really able to excel and thrive in the workplace. And so just understanding what that system is like now, helping to show people through tours or through other firsthand activities is a great way to help become an advocate for the system and show people what it's like.
Yeah, something else I would add to that, Lee, is that anybody can go onto the Colorado Workforce Development Council's website, see who participates as members of the council, and you likely, if you're a business member in any community around the state, there's a good chance you probably know one of the local members, and there are efforts beyond the subcommittees and the task force with just the different partner organizations that the council engages with, and opportunities in multiple facets of those efforts that you could get involved in as well.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And we can find more information at what website?
At coworkforcecouncil.org.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Stay with us here on Connect and Collaborate. We're going to be right back continuing this stellar conversation talking about workforce development, specifically the Colorado Workforce Development Council and exactly all of the inner workings and how people can get involved. So we'll be right back. Stay with us here on cobrt.com/live. Be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page while you're here, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. Once again, I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and we are having our monthly check-in with the Colorado Workforce Development Council. I have Lee Wheeler-Berliner in studio, Director of CWDC.
Hello, Alex.
Hello, welcome back after that break. And as we know now, the Colorado Workforce Development Council is a governor-appointed program dedicated to helping Coloradans find meaningful employment and Colorado businesses have access to skilled workforce. And so we're looking at some of the relationships of how we get that entity all plugged in together all throughout the state of Colorado, not just the Denver metro area.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so great conversation. If you want to reintroduce your guest here.
Yeah, so I'm excited to have Karls Sickman with us today, as well as Tim Fry. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yes. And so you have some key initiatives, I'm imagining, for 2019. So tell us about what the council's working on.
We do. We're continuing to drive our strategies forward, and those are some of the things we've talked about on this show and over the last several months. And that is, number one, ensuring we have an industry-led system, and that's really driven by our sector strategies. And our sector strategies are focused on the formation of regional industry-led sector partnerships throughout the state of Colorado. We currently have 26 different sector partnerships in all parts of the state. And these are really powerful groups because it's industry coming together at a shared table to talk about the issues they're facing. That's always a component in this day and age of workforce and how they're finding the skilled talent that they need. But there's other issues that come up as well, whether it's logistical concerns about how they're getting their products to market, or if there's shared regulatory issues that they're sensing that they can put together a platform and advocate at a higher level for changes. There's a lot of different dynamics of how those sector partnerships can really drive value for those businesses and enhance those communities. As we think about the sector partnership aspect for a moment, in 2019, we're focusing on the retail sector. The retail sector in Colorado is a group that is really a launch pad for so many individuals in their careers. If you're in any room of 50 plus people and you ask how many of you had your first job in the retail or hospitality industry, you're going to see 60 to 80% of the folks raise their hand, whether that be food service in a fast food restaurant or other food service setting, or a front end sales floor retail type experience. It's a sector that allows people with almost zero skills to come in and develop a strong base of foundational skills. And as we think about the workforce of the future and the way our economy is evolving in Colorado, we need to ensure that we have a good pipeline of individuals who are coming out of high school, coming out of post-secondary education with academic skills, but with also those foundational skills about how do you show up to work on time? How do you engage in strong customer service? How do you listen to individuals and fulfill the obligations that you have? And so we're excited to be working in the retail industry to see how we can support sector partnerships in that space, and then ultimately the upskilling of incumbent workers. Incumbent workers is the fancy long word for people who already have a job in the space. So we're excited to be working on that. Another piece of what we do is building out our career pathway systems throughout the state of Colorado. And so this year for our career pathway work, we're focused on the education industry. And this is another interesting industry to really tackle and dig into in the state of Colorado, because typically people within education think of themselves as educators. They don't necessarily think of themselves as a business or as an industry collectively. And there is really an end result where our education system is supplying the workers that the rest of our economy needs. But if that industry isn't able to adequately supply individuals for the rest of our economy, then we're going to have really long-term systemic issues in our state. And we've hit a point where education is the fourth largest employer in the state of Colorado by the number of employees. It creates about $10 billion in annual payroll to the state of Colorado, some money flowing into local communities. And there's also about 16,000 openings a year right now in the education space. And so we're working throughout the state of Colorado to understand some of the localized needs. What are the challenges to getting people into the education industry, to get them excited about it? And how can we bring industry representatives to the table to help solve some of those challenges, and then ultimately map out the various career pathways in education, whether that's in teaching or in education administration, from an early childhood perspective up to the post-secondary perspective as well. That's a lot of fun digging into that issue right now. The last piece I'll mention before we talk more with our guests and get their perspective on some of these activities and initiatives is that a large part of what the CWDC office does, the staff that I get to manage, is provide technical assistance to local community partners throughout the state of Colorado. And I have a team of people who serve as consultants to those different parts of the state to help them understand how you can build up and support your industry-led sector partnership, how you can engage in career pathway systems building, and mapping out those programs as well. And so we're taking a new look at how we deliver that technical assistance this year. And so we're looking at April to launch a new technical assistance platform on a technology platform that will allow local communities to submit applications for specific projects that they're interested in pursuing to get the financial, sometimes consultative technical assistance that they need to help solve those solutions on a local level. So we're excited to be moving ahead really, at a quick pace this year. It's January 2nd. We had a staff meeting at 8:30 this morning, which was set to be a strategy meeting. And I got my team in there and said, all right, it's a brand new year. We're going to talk about our strategy for the year, which I was super pumped about. I got a few blank stares, I'll be honest with you, but we are excited about this work ahead. And so I want to reintroduce Kyle and Tim. As you heard, Kyle works with First Bank here in the Denver metro area. Tim is the owner of Mountain Racing Products in Mesa County. And I'll start with Tim and just ask you, from your perspective in Grand Junction, what are some of the aspects of the council's work that you find the most compelling?
Well, thanks, Lee. I think the key thing, and I don't know that it's necessarily, the most compelling thing in this area. It's really the most compelling thing for the council and the entire state, is that, you kind of going back to that piece that it is industry-led, and we are, it's kind of a win-win situation all the way around, because we're working with employers to help identify the gaps and create those sector partnerships where we can, look at education and training programs and career pathways that allow, in a lot of cases, our highest needs population within the state, people who are trying to transition maybe from either a job that has exited or an industry that's exited, or people who are just coming into the workforce and need to develop those skills. And we're able to create programs that are geared to give those individuals a clear pathway and clear training to move into an industry need and an industry job that is growing and flourishing in the state. So you're basically, by working with industry and identifying those specific needs and then creating those partnerships that create the training and create the education programs to get more individuals into those industries, you're creating a win-win on both sides of the equation. And it's really helping to drive the entire economy of the state to ensure that we do have, long-term sustainable industries within the state that we can count on to continue to grow the state, into the foreseeable future. So I think that's really the most compelling thing to me, is that I think when I moved to Colorado and started a company, I didn't really think about workforce as much as I should have. Mm-hmm. And I think when you're trying to attract a large company, that's a critical piece that they're looking at, is what is the workforce that's available. But a lot of growth does come from smaller companies, and those are ones that identify the gap usually after they're up and running, and being able to work with them and identify that gap and create pathways to get our residents into those jobs is really a great outcome for the council and a great outcome for the state.
Okay, thank you. Kyle, what about you? In your perspective, what's the most compelling aspect of the work?
Well, I find it all compelling, but I'll certainly narrow it down to a few things. You talked a little bit about sector partnerships, and I think you explained a little bit about what those are, but essentially they're these organizations convened through the CWDC of industries or geographic or NGO partners who are coming together to solve a problem either being faced geographically or through an industry, and trying to work together for shared practices, et cetera, and figuring out how to come to solutions. So I've really watched from my first days of joining up with CWDC several years back, watched the organization really grow this program of sector partnerships from, enough that you could count on one hand to the multitudes that we have across the state today. And what I'm most particularly motivated by is these seemingly insurmountable issues that are approached on an individual basis, especially when you look at certain issues that arise in some of the rural counties, and how we've watched these collectives of organizations, companies, NGOs supported by the facilitators at CWDC really arrive at these solutions over the years and have these replicatable policies and procedures in place that are being reenacted not only throughout the state but throughout the country, and really seeing Colorado get to be a leader in that work. You mentioned the total number of partnerships, but I think when I looked at the most recent statistics, almost half of those, I think 8 or 9, were located in rural communities, which is really impressive to me and really helps address this issue that constantly is coming up of how do we address the rural issues. Beyond that is the approaches that have been done in sector partnerships. I'm watching some of those efforts spill over into more emerging efforts that you've referenced here, which are things like work-based learning, career pathways, 2-generation strategies, and really seeing the exact same tools that were implemented to be successful in sector partnerships implemented in those strategies as well, which is really optimistic in terms of how those are going to play out going forward. You mentioned very briefly a minute ago one of the career pathways that we're focusing on in the coming years being education. And you were obviously there, but when the council convened together earlier this fall and we were going to identify what was going to be the career pathway that we were going to focus on in the coming year, there was an extensive conversation around various facets of education, and we all kind of landed on this issue of education is really what needs to be addressed right now in Colorado, and getting teachers and getting the people we need into the industry. And we had this extensive conversation about how do you define education as an industry? Can you even enact change? Do we have the ability or the authority to do so? Will the education partners be willing participants?
Right.
Yes, it took a long time to get to the point where we said, yes, we can do this and we're going to do it. But the kind of unanimous agreement of people from across industry, nonprofit, government to say, yeah, this is something we need to focus on, and education will work with us. We're going to figure it out. Was really exciting for me, and I'm excited to see how that plays out over the next year. And then kind of historically, I'd say the thing that I was most impressed by when I first got involved with CWDC, and I hope to see carry forward, is just the flexible and adaptive nature of the discretionary funding streams, which enable the council to support best practices, emerging trends, and both work, industry, and technology, that are changing in real time, are able to be funded in real time by that flexible, adaptive funding stream.
Great, thank you. I mentioned earlier that the council meets 3 times a year and we come together, and some people may be thinking, well, what does that mean? What do you do for those 2 days when you meet? And the council itself has an obligation to advise the governor on specific aspects of workforce development and how the state is going to move forward and how we're going to utilize a small portion of federal resources to enact change and to drive the right direction for our state. And so Kyle, you just referenced some of those decisions that have been made. One is identifying areas and industries of focus every year. Another role of the council in those meetings is to look at the budget that we have for discretionary spending for innovation in our workforce development system and really make some strong decisions about where we're going to invest those dollars to yield the best benefits for all of Colorado, for the businesses, for the individuals, for the taxpayers. At the end of the day, we function as stewards of taxpayer dollars, and we're here to support a thriving Colorado. And so that's some of the ways we get to do that moving forward. Sometimes we engage in topics of conversation that are a little bit unexpected, I think, for someone from the outside thinking, well, you're on a governor-appointed board. What are you going to do for 2 days? We like to throw in some wrinkles in there. Tim, I'll go to you. Are there aspects of the council or the work or the meetings that have really been surprising to you?
I think I think one thing is I've been pleasantly surprised as I've gotten involved with the council over the last couple of years at how, I think there is a perception within rural Colorado and in counties that are outside, the I-25 corridor that the state doesn't think about us in these other areas. And I have been pleasantly surprised by how much, and I think Kyle's alluded to some of the sector partnerships and the programs that are outside of, the I-25 corridor counties. And, that has been it's been very evident by the discussions and that the council has had that it is really focused on impacting, the entire state, having a positive impact on the entire state. I think another thing, specifically talking about the discretionary spending. I think that's really where the power of the council is. If you look at workforce development, if you look at your local workforce development board and your local workforce center, a lot of the programs that they have are, federal and state funding that is very formulaic. You have this unemployment rate, you have this type of an economy, you get this amount of funding. And in a lot of cases, that funding has some, fairly significant limitations on how it can be used. And I think this discretionary funding at the state level and the impact that the council has on helping to direct that funding really allows us to identify needs that are maybe falling through the cracks, or we can use more of a scalpel to get in there and really figure out where what types of programs can help move the needle in either lowering unemployment or meeting a specific or even an emerging industry needs in ways that the general funding can't cover. So I think that's been I think that ability through the discretionary funding has been a positive surprise. The impact that can have on a local economy.
Okay, great. Kyle, how about you? What's been surprising from your perspective?
Yeah, so the most surprising component to me has just been the misperceptions that I historically had about what government could look like. And the biggest surprise to me has really just been the level of interagency coordination that takes place under the advisement of the council, and not just interagency cooperation coordination, but cabinet level engagement. We have cabinet level members from various departments that are highly engaged in all of these conversations and talking about how they can interact with one another, what the barriers are, and how to tear those down. And it's very nonpartisan. Additionally, beyond that, just the innovative approach to all the issues that are discussed in these forums and implemented. And then historically, when I first came on, we were still coming out of the recession and had a $0 discretionary budget at that time, and was still seeing these just monumental successes with absolutely no budget outside of general operating, and just seeing these people go out and really execute and have such great passion for what they're doing was really what was most surprising to me. And maybe it shouldn't have been surprising, but it was unexpected and really changed my whole perception of what government operations can look like. And then you talked a little bit about just your staff and how they provide the technical assistance. And I think it's important to hone in on the fact that, this is high level expertise that's being provided to C-level personnel around the state. These are essentially consultants that you're getting from the state. And I don't think it's what most people expect when they go and interact with the state workforce council, to have this type of high level expertise. I'd be privileged to have any one of the staff members of the council working at my company. And I think that speaks a lot to the organization.
That's fantastic. Kyle, You've been chair for about a year and a half with the council now. In your role as the chair, you've gotten the opportunity to interact with other state workforce boards because the functions of the CWDC, we are enabled by federal law, and there are similar boards in other states. What have those interactions taught you or revealed to you about the work happening in Colorado?
Yeah, so it's always really fun to go out and talk to our counterparts and my peers in the other states. We all convene kind of like the council meeting and talk about shared best practices. And I'll tell you, we are the most popular people at those meetings. Everybody wants to talk to us. We walk out of there with multiple phone calls and requests and emails to follow up after the fact. And it's just really exciting. I'd say both at the state level and on a national level, Colorado's looked to as a success story, particularly around the coordination of those various agencies that I was talking about, as well as regional, industry, and political interests, all being coordinated in a way that drives actionable change and informs tangible results that are seen by industry, government, NGO, education, and citizens. And it's, I would say my biggest takeaway is that we're doing things right, and it's being seen around the country.
Okay, great. And so, Tim, you're in the chair-elect role, and just curious to hear from you, what are you most excited about as you've stepped into this relatively new role for you as chair-elect?
Well, I think it's exciting to be involved at the council level and coming in eventually as the chair of the council. Because exactly what Kyle was just saying, it is an extremely strong group of individuals, not only the council members and, the different division heads, but also the staff, at the CWDC. So I'm excited to be part of that on a different level. And I'm also, I have been involved at the local level and the state level, and, I'm looking, most forward to having that national interaction and working with other states and understanding what they're doing and what we're doing and kind of what's coming down from not only the federal level, but how we can play a bigger role in what is happening at that level. So. I think it's an exciting time. I think the council has been having a great deal of success in accomplishing its goals, not only defining and setting out those goals extremely well, but accomplishing those goals. I'm just excited to be part of that.
Okay, excellent. And our chair is always going to be a representative from one of our businesses. As a business-led council, it will always be a business chair. We've just got about 1 minute left. I'll give Kyle and Tim each a moment to say just a final few words of what would you say to other businesses who want to learn more or might be considering getting involved with the CWDC? Kyle?
Do it. It doesn't mean you have to serve on the council. Like I said before, there's a lot of task force projects, other efforts out there. Get involved, have a say in how your tax money is being spent.
Great. Excellent. Tim, a few words from you.
Yeah, I would encourage people, business leaders to, take a look at their local workforce development council or their workforce development board, get involved at that level. And that is going to continue to drive, to the state level if you want to get involved with the CWDC, especially if you're in a more rural area of the state. That workforce center and that workforce development board is a key way to help drive the local economy as well. So.
Great. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. Yes, thank you all very much for joining me today on Connect and Collaborate. It's been a wonderful conversation. Once again, be sure to check out Colorado Workforce Development Council. Also, like and subscribe our YouTube page while you're here. Have a great day.
Thank you.